Please welcome Aaron Levie,
Yes, there you
CEO of Box, and a warm welcome for John Erlichman, Senior West Coast Correspondent for Bloomberg Television.
Sweet.
How's it going?
Good. How are you?
Good.
I like the shoes, as always.
Oh, thank you.
Do you want to show them? Aaron always has pretty awesome shoes.
Just Zappos is all you have to do?
Zappos.
Yeah, yours are like moccasins. That's great.
I have to think, you know, what you're going to wear and how I'm going to choose my shoe choices.
Yeah, very good call.
Thank you. You're not here to talk about shoes, but...
Actually, I am, but that's what I was told
The
to
new
talk
vertical for Box is shoes.
It's about 3 companies that we're going to focus on.
So LA. So this is actually a town that you know very well. Going back to your college days, right?
Yep. I went to USC. Trojans in here? Okay, good, very good. I went during the years where we were cheating, so but we only discovered that afterwards. Right. So we were authentic fans at first, and we started the company in 2000 very early 2005, late 2004 was when we kind of thought about the problem, and just we happened to be in an environment where you were sharing files and content with lots of people in and outside of the classroom. I was actually interning at Paramount Pictures at the time when we were starting Box, and so was also seeing all of the challenges around sharing content in the entertainment industry, and that led us to starting and growing Box.
So you have this very entertaining Twitter feed, but I was equally impressed by your LinkedIn page.
Oh, thank you.
So, for example,
that's a rare compliment. Thank you.
You highlight that time at Paramount. You say, I was the guy who faxed your memos and copied your papers, a skill I still hold to this day.
Yes. Although actually, I'm not so good at faxing anymore. So, but I was, I got really, really good at faxing paper at Paramount. Like, I was the guy you called when you wanted like a 2-minute fax. So. And
you also talked about interning at Miramax. Did
Yep.
you? So he also put on his LinkedIn page.
It's very personal.
Harvey Weinstein one day said hello to you in the lobby, and you cried from happiness.
Yes.
I mean, I know you're a joker, but no, seriously, this is a side that we don't always hear from you, that you sort of had this early interest in that world.
Box was not my first job.
You know, what were you learning from those internships? Or
Not to do the entertainment industry. So no, so the challenge was. I did a lot of software in high school and got really interested in film. USC didn't let me into the film program, so I decided to sort of fall back on the software side of my life. And
so you enrolled, you wanted to go to film school, didn't happen.
Correct.
And go ahead.
Yeah, so that was you're just reminding me of how disappointing it was. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. So they didn't let me into the film program, which I wouldn't have. Now that I think back to the movies I made. Really, really just bad quality art. And,
I mean, I did read that you had thought about, you know, modeling yourself after Quentin Tarantino. Is that right? That was sort of what you were thinking a little bit?
The better parts, yeah. So but we're, you know, so I thought, you know, like every 17-year-old who watches Pulp Fiction, you decide that you're going to go to film school and make action dramas and dark comedy dramas. And they correctly thought that I shouldn't be making those, and so I fell back, studied business, and focused a lot on computers. And then through some internships, definitely understood that I really wanted to probably build software to help the industry as opposed to maybe being directly in it. And what we noticed at Box and why we started the company was it was really, really painful sharing data and sharing files with partners and with people that you're working on projects with, and when you wanted to access content from different locations, all of that was really, really difficult in 2004. So we started the company, and interestingly enough, one of our first angel investors was Mark Cuban. And so he actually invested in the company, and then that led us to dropping out of college. We moved up to Palo Alto in 2000, at the very, very end of 2005, and then we've been building the company ever since. And I think the only kind of other strategic shift that happened was in 2007, we decided that in the consumer market, the dynamics of the storage industry we're going to basically lead Microsoft and Apple and Google to effectively subsidizing this product for free to consumers. And that the only way we were going to be able to build a long-term sustainable business model was if we focused on the enterprise. And so in 2007, we basically took a look at our customer base and saw some of the initial traction we had, and we basically decided to focus entirely on the enterprise software market. And interestingly, effectively our first customer in the enterprise was Wasserman Media Group. And they really kind of pushed the limits of our product. They had a lot of media collaboration they needed to do around athletes. And their initial use cases really drove us to building out the platform that we have today.
A few different paths we can go. I just want to back up for a second.
Yeah.
I mean, you guys have had this explosive growth and lots of venture capital money, people lining up, interested in the Box story. Mark Cuban, an early investor, as you highlighted. But first of all, just going back to you're at college, the idea starts to come together, and that's when you sort of say, okay, let's go back to Seattle and start working on that? Is that kind of the...
Yeah, well, we started working on it in college, and then our summer of sophomore year, we went back to Seattle where we grew up, and we tried to build the company out in Seattle, and I don't know if anybody's ever tried to do that, but it's really hard to build a company in Seattle. The venture capital community wasn't as mature, and it was raining all the time, a lot of issues. So we decided that we really had to go back to California. It's also really hard, frankly, to build a technology company in LA. You need to be able to have this sort of virtuous cycle of Google engineers and Facebook people, and that talent pool is really important. So we actually decided to move to the Bay Area as a way that we were going to get venture capital and engineers to join our mission.
And then it started to get going. If I think about, you mentioned LA, if I think about Hollywood versus Silicon Valley.
Yes.
It's a subject you've thought a lot about.
Uh-huh.
You wrote a piece a couple of years ago.
Oh, really?
You did?
I've done a lot of things that I don't remember on the internet. So
it's
okay.
on the internet.
Okay.
Called A Tale of Two Cities.
Oh, I remember this. Yeah,
yeah,
good.
it wasn't.
Okay.
I mean, it wasn't.
Yeah.
You were just highlighting the fact that there are some differences between these towns, but they are at odds in some ways.
No, I come in peace.
No, I'm curious. A couple of years after writing that, do you feel like anything has changed?
Well, what's interesting is, so basically, if I recall correctly, this was this right around SOPA, or?
Yes.
I think this was at like peak
Yes.
SOPA, and the issue was, do we want an open internet that lets people communicate and share freely, or do we want one that is, more the SOPA direction, which was probably dangerous for the internet broadly?
Right.
And I think what it felt like was there was a misunderstanding, and not even a misalignment, but just a deep philosophical difference around how we thought about technology and these open platforms between the Valley and Hollywood, or at least the lobbyists or regulators related to Hollywood. And so that was really just highlighting that, and really and to hopefully put more of a light on both sides of the equation, which is actually in the Valley, we don't think enough about sort of rights holders and think about actually the importance of having great content and quality content, and actually the importance of being able to monetize that and secure it and maintain the rights and ownership of that. And a lot of times when you build these technology companies like YouTube or whatever, you're not thinking about all of the other side of it. You're just thinking about, well, everything should be open, and we should have these distribution platforms that are available to everybody. So the idea was, well, maybe we should actually just collaborate more and talk more about these issues and find better solutions to these problems. So interestingly, I think that it's not any one thing that has changed over the past couple of years since that happened, but I think what you are seeing are better commercial platforms that are being effectively supported by both industries. So I don't know the very latest, but I think that most in the music industry, have fairly positive inclinations toward Pandora and these kind of platforms that are adding new revenue streams. A lot of that has changed. These business models. I just was at a breakfast this morning. We were talking about YouTube as it relates to a traditional Hollywood studio and their ability to now leverage all of the new media potential of YouTube. You see with things like Netflix coming in with, in some cases, far more capital than you might get otherwise, being able to go and purchase and procure content, and that's because of some unique advantages that Netflix has around their information, around their customer base. So in many respects, there's been an explosion of business models and potential for these two industries to collaborate. And then in the area that we really work in, which is on the B2B side, we have seen actually a pretty significant sort of push toward the cloud, and for on the back end of these businesses, thinking a lot more about IT and how do you enable collaboration, how do you enable sharing with new technologies. So I think the world has changed pretty dramatically in the past couple of years, but probably not one singular catalyst for that, just more maturity on these platforms and the business models associated with them.
Okay, so if we were to talk specifically about Box and the industries that you serve, entertainment is a big one.
Yep.
I mean, explain it to us. It's what? It's movie studios, it's TV studios, it's music labels, it's all the above?
Yep. Yeah, so effectively we will help any business that has lots of information and content stored in digital files, and we help those businesses manage that content, share that content securely, make it available from iPads. And so you can almost just rank industries by their propensity to use content and the value associated with that content, and that's effectively how those industries rank in our own customer base in terms of dominance of those industries. And so it's no surprise that the media and entertainment industry is one of our fastest growing verticals, because the ability to secure, protect, manage, share, collaborate around digital assets is basically what a lot of those businesses and industries that or subsectors that's their lifeblood. So talent agencies, TV studios, film studios, marketing agencies, record labels, management firms, every organization and constituency that needs to interact with content around a project or an artist or a film, we're trying to create the digital platform that lets you do that on the workflow and back-end side. So not necessarily direct to consumer, but really in the operational side of the industry.
Yeah, industry seems to be the key word as opposed to business. I mean, I think every company has to deal with lots of outside parties.
Yep.
Maybe in entertainment, just because we understand who agents are, and we understand who the distributors are, and we understand, who the lawyers are, it's more obvious to us. But if there's a film and you need to share footage from that film with all these various parties, how do you build the business around that concept? Get the industry, for example, to use Box as opposed to saying, hey, you studio, this is why you should use Box.
Well, it's really interesting. So this is a unique industry in that respect. So we actually did a study of our customer base, and we looked at how customers shared by industry and what were the sharing and collaboration patterns that looked different based on the vertical that you were in. And as an example, in healthcare, there's very little outside sharing. Everything is sort of happening within a hospital, within a healthcare network, and with very small groups of nodes. So one or two people will share and collaborate with each other around a specific patient or issue. In manufacturing, it's a little bit different, because you do have to sort of work with your supply chain, and you have to work with your manufacturing company, but it's very sort of one-to-many. So you'll have one site that has to work with and distribute out their content to other manufacturers that they need to work with. In entertainment, it's the closest industry, by and large, across our entire customer base, that really looks like a web, where you have every node is somehow interlinked with some other node in and outside of individual organizations. And I think that's actually how, if you think about how the industry operates, every single artist has a lawyer, a manager, a business person, a marketing agency, a PR firm, and every project they work on probably intersects with all of those organizations and individuals. And what's interesting is that the entire world of software has been built up over the past 20 to 30 years, thinking about individual organizations as owning technology for the people in that organization, and that's how you have internal IT. But this is an industry where there's no sort of one organization. Everything is truly a network of collaboration and exchanging that happens. And what we've found in working with customers is that, by and large, for the past couple decades, I mean, essentially in the digital era, there hasn't been a software platform that really understands that actually everything is interconnected and web-like. And so what ends up happening is people just use email, or you use FTP, or you share out a link to something. And the problem with that is that you don't get the sort of vast effect, the benefit of everybody on a single platform, speeding up the development of a project, bringing new content to market faster, being able to distribute marketing digitally across all of your channels instantly. So all of those things are now possible because we have the technology to do so. So this is an industry that you do have to think about from an industry standpoint, where we can't just go company by company, because it sort of requires the buy-in from multiple parties to be able to actually get the gains of the cloud. And that's what we spend a lot of time doing. And now we work with a number of movie studios. We work with a number of agencies that are starting to put Box into place and scale it up.
What's the reservation they have, if any? I mean, I think piracy, I would imagine, comes up all the time when you're talking about potential customers.
Yeah, so it's interesting. Actually, the reservation is the specific thing that we actually can solve. So it tends to be security. You sort of believe that by moving information to the cloud, you're giving up some amount of control of that information. It actually turns out that when you look at most environments, the sort of belief is that you have all your technology inside of your data center, inside of your network, when in reality what's happening is everybody's sort of just working around those systems, and they're emailing files, or they're using FTP, or they're using other systems, which is giving you less visibility into where your content is. It's giving you less control. It's giving you less security, ultimately, and less privacy around your content. So it turns out that the cloud, and this is not just Box specific, but a lot of solutions, will give you more control and more visibility into where your information is, because it gets to be centralized in one place. And so any of our customers, as an example, when they put content into Box, when they share that content out, they're not sharing out lots of versions of that content. They're centralizing it so they can share it out from one place, which means that you get instant real-time analytics on any way that you want to share that content. And so, as an example, there was a somewhat popular release of a new album that happened by surprise recently. And one of the reasons why it was kept in secret so well is because Box was the platform that was used for managing that content. And they were able to decide to reveal the information in the news at a time when they wanted to, and they could keep all of the security and controls in one place in the meantime. And this is allowing content owners to actually do more with their information and actually have more security around it than if they hadn't gone to the cloud.
Box and Beyonce.
Maybe not.
Speaking of secrets, it's been reported you guys are planning to go public. Anything you can shed on that subject?
Probably not. So that's two subjects in a row that we can't talk about. But we are, we're trying to build an independent, long-term company. So that's the sort of path that we're on, is staying very independent.
Well, sort of, if you look at what happens to your business, let's say over the next 12 months, and obviously you've got a workforce that is getting bigger, and you are looking to do more with the business, what are the kinds of things you want to do with Box to take that next step? Do you want to make acquisitions? Are there new areas you want to sort of expand the business into?
Yeah, so we're definitely, you'll definitely see us expand over time. Obviously, we have about 1,000 people, many of which are engineers focused on developing out our product further. We hear requests across all of the industries that we serve, and our job is to find patterns in those requests that let us build high leverage technology for our customers. So as an example, we've been hearing a lot about customers wanting watermarking capabilities on top of content, whether it's digital audio, digital video, or documents. And that's something that whether you're in life sciences, whether you're in the legal industry, whether you're in media and entertainment, that's an area that obviously makes sense for us to support. So over time, you'll see us bake in deeper technology around media and information that supports our customers depending on what industry they're in.
So it's like data crunching, being able to sort of make better sense of all that information, and that becomes kind of a new business for you guys too? Or?
Well, so that one's really interesting. So can I pitch everybody on something? So here's the pitch. So everybody is used to balance sheets, and every business effectively has a balance sheet and a cash flow statement, and that allows you to effectively track and get insights into where are your physical assets, what are your liabilities, what's the revenue coming in, all of the the traditional financial metrics of a business. But those traditional financial metrics are often based on a backwards-looking view of how we thought about business, like a lot of like core asset-driven, physical asset-driven types of metrics of businesses. So our belief is that in the future, you're actually going to have something that might be akin to an information balance sheet, where as a business, once we realize that competitive advantage is going to come more from companies that have better data, better mobility of that data, better ability to make sense of their data and information, that as an investor in a company or as a manager of a company, I will probably want to know what does the information balance sheet look like just as much as I'd want to know what the traditional balance sheet looks like. So let's just take a real-time example that I think is fairly familiar. If you look at Netflix and how they now have a strategic advantage to go out and pay the exact right price, or at least maybe a more competitive price for content, or they can make more predictable decisions on what content they want to go license or acquire because they have so much more data than any traditional network or studio is going to be able to have about what audience patterns look like and what people are going to want to watch. Well, that is not showing up in any traditional way that you think about Netflix as a business because all I have access to is their revenue and cash flow and all of these types of things. So when you compare HBO to Netflix, it looks like they are competing because you look at their assets and liabilities in the same way. But if you actually said who has better data, who has better information, who is making more use of that information, they start to look like very different businesses. And so more and more over time, we think that every industry, and in this industry in particular, you're going to want to really know how much data do I have about my customers? How much data do I have about the projects going on? Where is the market going? Can I actually get that information to the right people in my business? None of this matters if it's all in a silo that's not accessible by anyone. And so as information becomes more of the way that we compete and using that information becomes more of the definition of competitive advantage, we think that we're going to build a lot of software that hopefully makes your business more intelligent, helps you make better decisions, help you bring products to market faster. These are all of the things that Box is building, there are few industries where it'll make even as much sense as it will in this space because of how content-driven and information-driven this industry is.
So you guys are focused on businesses.
What do you think about that pitch? Does it work for everybody? Okay. Oh, really? Standing ovation? This is amazing. Okay.
If that were data, it would be positive data, it sounds like.
Yeah, okay, fine.
So, okay, you guys are very focused on business. Dropbox, another company in this area.
I've heard of them.
You've heard of them.
Yes.
Which is focused on the consumer, which you guys long ago decided that was not your market.
We like consumers, but not as a business model.
And I still get confused myself at the fact that you've got these two fast-growing Bay Area companies, one Box, one Dropbox.
Yeah, totally. The trademark department also gets confused. So.
But in terms of this, I don't know, this competition between your two businesses, even if they are focused on the consumer and you're focused on business, I go back to the IPO question because it feels to me like there is almost this race for one of you to be public before the other to sort of share this investor story with the world, even if you're focusing on different groups, or you're focused on business and they're focused on consumers.
Is that a period or a question?
It's a question.
I would say that we probably think about that race a lot less than kind of people watching the industry think about it. It's not a huge priority for us to be kind of in a financial market race. We think it's far more important that we build out a very robust business. But ultimately in the marketplace, we are very much in a race. I mean, our job is to make sure that enterprises and chief information officers and security officers and the strategy departments of organizations really understand the differences between our products and platforms, and that's what we're very focused on, is ensuring that corporations know that they need to be able to innovate with technology, and we want Box to be one of the key vendors that they look at when they're thinking about the future of their IT strategy. The
companies that you are really competing with, or get sort of labeled as the classic tech companies, the big players in technology, everybody always likes to use the Microsoft example.
Right.
Microsoft has a new CEO, Satya Nadella. If I read your Twitter feed, it looks like you sort of have approval of him as a leader for the company.
I shared my approval, yes. I'm sure he cares, yes.
I mean, did you reach out to Satya Nadella? Have you guys shared an email or a text since you became?
Just a Snapchat. It was, we wanted to keep it brief. So,
but if we look at your business versus a business like Microsoft,
yeah.
and I remember you saying, I think in the lead up to them picking a CEO, sort of their need for a visionary, and
yes.
I think some people have put Satya Nadella in that camp. Do you feel like you're already getting a sense on where Microsoft is going because they selected him as their CEO?
So Satya actually he was one of the first sort of executives of Microsoft to reach out to us a couple years ago, and we usually think that if somebody from Microsoft reaches out that they have a knife behind their back, and so in this case, every single thing that we interacted on felt like it was a real genuine interest in becoming a much more open company and platform. And I would say that, so that's why I am very bullish on Satya, because he's actually been at Microsoft a very long time. That was an initial knock that people thought, well, is he going to bring enough change? But he was the change agent within Microsoft, kind of moving up through the ranks. And so if you look at something like Azure, Azure is one of Microsoft's most open platforms. The amount of open source initiatives that they support within Azure, which usually is antithetical to the Microsoft way of doing things, so they want you to use their consolidated set of technologies and proprietary services. He has driven a level of openness in that company that was very unusual. So, to the extent that the future is going to be defined by open and heterogeneous platforms and architectures, Microsoft will have a much stronger position than they have had in the past decade. And I don't have a good sense of, is he going to come up with the next iPhone? That's probably not his DNA. It's probably much more on the enterprise side, much more on platforms and really at the system level. So you probably won't see them be the first to market with a new watch that is going to totally change the world. But you might see them start making sense of Internet of Things and how do you connect sensors to the cloud, all like really business infrastructure types of propositions. And if I were a Microsoft shareholder, which I'm not, as you can imagine why, that would be where I'd want that company to go. I think there's enough competition between Samsung and Apple and Google on the consumer side. I think Microsoft is in a much better position if they focus in some of the business systems. But we'll see certainly where they end up.
Okay, you mentioned the future. In this town, they talk a lot about the future of things like TV. A slightly personal question.
Okay.
Do you have cable? Do you watch TV at home? Do you have a cable package, a triple play, anything like that?
No. So I have an iTunes machine, otherwise known as an Apple TV. But no cable.
I mean, is this common with some of your employees too? Not that it's a job requirement and not have cable, but do you find the young people who are coming to work for your business that they have cable? I ask this question because Comcast obviously just acquired Time Warner Cable. Some people sort of immediately put out some headlines suggesting that this positions Comcast in a better way, sort of in this battle for the future of television, or the battle over the future of television. And yet, what hasn't really changed is sort of those people who still feel like, cable. So I'm just curious to know what you think about the future of television.
So I'm not your future of television guy. That might be a different panel. So my challenge is really just, it's time-based. Like I love, you can get me into a show and then I'll disappear for like 3 weeks and come out a zombie. So I stopped doing that like 7 years ago. I think like Friday Night Lights was just where I was just like, I have to stop this television thing. So you can kind of get a sense of what stage I'm at. I'm not Game of Thrones. I'm not House of Cards, unfortunately. I think that, so I don't know. It's really interesting. The internet instinct within me says that everything should move online, everything should be IP-based, you should pull up your content from any device. That should be disruptive to linear programming. And at the same time, I think the studios and production companies are making better content than ever before. That's exactly the right response in the face of disruption. Is you need to continue to improve the quality of content and ensure that you have a scarce asset and resource that nobody else has. That seems to have continued. It doesn't seem like that's changing anytime soon. So I think that I think the important thing is just to not think of television and media as zero sum. And we're going to be moving to a world of many, many platforms. And the best thing that you can do is try and not do too many artificial or arbitrary sort of constraints on those platforms. Certainly as a consumer of media, I think that we have a lot of those still today. But we're at a point where there's so much innovation, and I can effectively, I watch a lot of movies, and I can get to any movie that I generally need at this point. And as a consumer, I think that's awesome, and I think the industry continues to make as much money as it ever has.
Question about your leadership style.
Yeah, okay.
Nice
segue. Yes.
How would you describe it? What do you get most passionate about? There's all sorts of stuff that you have to think about, from getting talent to customers, all that kind of stuff. How would you describe you as a leader?
Yeah, I mean, I would say the main thing, and I think it's important to always have effectively a sort of North Star of where you're going directionally, and that leads to effectively all of our decision making. So we're really, really big believers in paranoia at Box, and so everything we do is about how are we going to continue to innovate, how are we not going to get disrupted, how do we make sure we build for where our customers are going, and everything sort of falls from there. So from a leadership standpoint, we just think about it as how can we move faster as a company, how can we bring new products to market that make sense for our customers, how do we build out the right kind of platform ecosystem, and everything falls in line from how can we move more quickly and be more innovative, and then it all comes down to strategy and people, and we're constantly getting better people and building a better strategy.
Speaking about getting better people, you bus people from San Francisco, right? There's a lot of technology companies that sort of...
Is this like a safe audience for that question? Okay. Does everybody know about the San Francisco busing problem? Yeah, okay. This is like really first world issues that we have going on.
I'm thinking about the evolution of your business, your evolution.
We have a bus, by the way, yes.
You do have a bus.
Yes.
The responsibility,
Don't egg it, please.
Do you think about that issue of your responsibility, the employee's responsibility, in sort of what's becoming a very touchy subject in San Francisco of, less room for the middle class because of all the successful technology companies that have given these new opportunities to people who now live in San Francisco and say bus down to the valley? I mean, sort of, how do you think about all that?
Okay, interesting. And then we'll go back to media, right? Okay. Maybe I should have kept us talking about television and cable. So I would just say really quickly, to me, it's a very different kind of question. We have buses because it's efficient. Your alternative is to have 75 extra cars on the road. We want to make it so people can get to work more easily. It's from a capitalistic intent also. We have Wi-Fi on the buses, which means you can work. So we get an extra 2 hours of work from people. We're very just focused on how do we create the most productivity from our employee base and for generally society. I don't think buses are actually the real issue. It's not even really a symptom of the issue. The issue is that you have just not a lot of housing in San Francisco, and so with scarce housing and an increased set of workforce, all you can do is have some shift in the population. So that's super unfortunate. The solution is you build more houses and you pay people more, and unfortunately we're unrelated to either of those. So we're going to keep busing people.
There you go. I'm not sure. Oh, we have a little bit of time here. Does anybody have a question? I think there are mics. I wanted to give.
Technically, he has a question.
Oh, okay.
Cool.
So I wanted to give, if you have a question, figured just give you a quick chance to.
I'm wondering what kind of, are you more consuming music? If you could wait a minute, we want to, we're recording the session.
Okay.
So.
I like repeating the question though, and then being able to modify it. So, okay.
Are you consuming more music if you're not watching like cable, or are you like consuming information all the time personally, like Feedly, or where is your information coming from? Part one. And part two, when you're talking about the pitch you gave about information being a metric, you're almost talking about the Bitcoinization, like creating another currency, right? So those bigger issues become like taxation. I mean, there's a whole number of issues around it. So I'd just like to know more about that per se. Like, is currency becoming irrelevant or being changed?
Yeah, interesting. So that first thing was that a personal question?
Yeah. What do you
okay. Yeah, I mean, I spend a lot of time on music because I'm at my computer a lot, and it's more fun to listen to Bob Dylan than it is sort of ambient office noise. So I'm on Spotify, 12 hours a day, and that's where I do most of my music. And then on the currency thing, it's interesting. It's not monetary currency. It's a different kind of way of valuing your assets and your information. So in a sense, it relates to the trend of Bitcoin, but it's much more about how do you think about your digital inventory and your digital assets as opposed to the value of your physical assets. So if you look at most modern ways of thinking about business assets, right? You have the ERP systems, right? And inside of your ERP system is what's in the supply chain, how many products and raw materials do we have? Well, there's not much of an equivalent in the digital space, right? What is my set of information assets that I have? What is my back catalog of music that I can go monetize? What are all the rights holders to all of my information? All of these kind of things, we haven't seen as much technology innovation around. So that's the space that you'll see Box probably play in, is really how do you manage and get more and extract more value from your information and get it to the right people. That's a big area of opportunity that we're going to invest in.
Before we go, you spent the bulk of the last decade build. Oh, is there another question?
Oh, there's one.
Yeah, just real quick.
I'm sorry.
So I'm curious, just from a strategic perspective, in the TV and media industry, there has been over the last 3-4 years a move, at least some startups, to connect post-production systems to talk about content creation. So when you say collaboration and workflow, in my head, because I'm kind of a cloud editing kind of guy, I think about that type of collaboration and workflow, but I haven't yet seen Box do anything with like Adobe Creative Cloud, or Deluxe does this type of thing. So curious about your perspective on the creation workflows.
Yeah, today, we end up being more of the platform for the end materials. So it's the product catalog. It's the omni-channel sort of set of marketing assets that you need to be able to distribute out across radio and TV and the e-commerce channel. It's the final audio file that you need to get out to reporters. All of that information tends to be where most of the data is today with Box. What you probably want, if you think about what a digital supply chain would look like, is if you think about an end-to-end experience, you'd want both the creative and ideation and collaboration process on really the production side to be integrated end-to-end with where your final information and assets are going to be as well. And that's going to be some mix of partnerships with the brands that you mentioned. Some of that will just be us being able to support larger workloads. So today our stated max file size is 5 gigabytes. You need to be able to have 500 gigabyte files to be able to actually do that successfully. So as we go a little bit deeper into those workflows, things around metadata and collaboration around metadata and some kind of lightweight automation there. The ability to plug into Adobe Creative Cloud, work with Deluxe, work with some of the post-production technologies. You're going to see us build really a partner ecosystem around that. But totally, I think we're very, very early in having accomplished that set of initiatives.
Cool.
Cool.
I think I gotta wrap this up. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. See you guys. Bye-bye.
Okay. Nice job.
Cool.
Thank you to Aaron and John.